Hello, and welcome back to the BFA Baby podcast. As always, I'm your host, Taylor Hartman, and we are drinking a Sprite on today's podcast. So crack open a little drink, a sweet treat, whatever, and we're gonna have a fun little talk today. So I wanted to dedicate this episode to the, albeit sometimes mysterious, if I'll use that word, conversation about inspiration and where artists get their inspiration, where dancers and actors and writers and musicians, and where inspiration to create comes from. And it's kind of something I've been thinking about a lot, and I wanted to really focus on some things that aren't dance, aren't specifically other people's pieces of dance that inspire my dancing, other things in the world, other types of art, etc. But first, I wanted to say that this is the second to last episode before the recap of season 2. We are almost there. We have this episode next week, and then that third week is going to be the season 2 recap, and we have successfully completed another season of the BFA Baby podcast, which is so exciting, and I've just really enjoyed the growth that this podcast has seen, and I've been really excited to see how it has come and gone, and what people's reactions are, the more interview format, and I'm just excited to see where the podcast goes in season 3. And please leave in the poll on Instagram at BFA Baby Podcast. You can email me at bfababypodcast@gmail.com. Anything you want to see on the show, more interviews, things you want me to talk about, anything, I am all ears for what you want on season 3. But yeah, I thought that I would shout out that we are nearing the end of season 2, which is really exciting. But I thought that an episode about inspiration would be really interesting, because inspiration is such a, it's such a come and go thing, what I'm inspired by is never the same, piece to piece, Obviously there are some through lines in my choreography, we talked about a couple episodes ago, finding your choreographic voice. We talked about, cough on the podcast, we talked about, finding your choreographic voice, and how a lot of the time there will be that through line of, things to see, things to think about, connections, things that overarchingly inspire you to create. And for me, a lot of that is movies. I find a lot of inspiration in film. I literally am basing my music resources for Dancers Final off of the movie Poor Things. I think I talked about... Oh, there's a ladybug on my glasses. Hi, baby. Hi. Let's take you outside. That was crazy. Okay. Bye, baby. That was crazy. Anyways, I'm very inspired by movies, and I'm basing this final off of Poor Things and kind of the movement quality and aesthetic quality there. And so that's a really big one, is movies, and the way that movies tell their stories through not just dialogue, but setting and costume, and the way that movies can really touch you through the use of music, because a scene could sound totally different and feel totally different based on what the underscoring is. And I really just wanted to kind of shout out movies as one of my big inspirations. I also find a lot of inspiration in lyrics, song lyrics, especially ones that tell a story or have a story behind it. I talked a lot about it on my Making of My Dance Film episode. The songwriter for Caesar on a TV Screen, the dance film that I directed for one of my finals, she has a really specific story that inspired her to write the song, so I kind of took inspiration from that story to write the song. Stories really do it for me. Stories and movies, I just love feeling transported to a new place. I love feeling like a fly on a wall in a room that I've never been in. I just love that feeling of being transported. And I like to do that a lot with my dancing. And even if it's something as simple as Caesar was, it's a very simple premise. You know, you're still now seeing the world through this character's eyes, and you're getting a new perspective on it that maybe you wouldn't have had before. So song lyrics, movies, stories. I like photos a lot, the way that painters find photo references. I think sometimes photos can really help me catch a vibe. If you ever work with me on a choreography project, I will show up to the first rehearsal with a mood board. And the mood boards are really important for me because they really help me kind of get myself into the world of the story. And they really help me build the world before I put the dancers in. Sometimes choreographies put the dancing and then they build the world. I like to have a world established and then put the dancers into it. So for Ask Her Again Tomorrow, this piece that I choreographed, we had a lot of friends hanging out over dinner photos. We had a lot of that dark academia, running around with your friends, inspiration, really tightly bonded friends in kind of this moody, gloomy scenarios was a lot of the energy that we put into the mood board, which then set the world of the dance, and I think as dancers, a lot of the time we are visual learners, and you can ask professors that I have even to this day, and they'll tell you that there's no such thing as a visual or auditory or kinesthetic learner, that everyone can learn anyway. But I think a lot of dancers tend to prefer to learn visually, and I think, at least for me and the dancers I've worked with, having that still image with a compilation of stuff, images, I think the Ask Her Again Tomorrow one had ink splatters on it, and coffee mug rings, and there's a photo of people playing cards, it transports you to the world, to the headspace that you want to be in when performing such a work. And having that visual aid really immediately takes your brain on where to go, and that really helps me then develop the characters, especially with Ask Her Again Tomorrow. There was a lot of character development that had to be done on my behalf so that I could present the characters to the dancers at the first rehearsal, and then they could kind of take it and run with it. I was answering questions that, they could very well have answered themselves and come to great conclusions, but, we just didn't have that kind of, deep divey time. So I was really big on, I'm going to flesh these characters out so they can step in and immediately start, discovering the world through their eyes. And, yeah, so building the world around me first with those photo references is really, really important to me, because then it helps the dancers kind of feel the world, and it helps me immediately. That's the first thing that I do when I have the idea and I'm committed to it. The very first thing that I do is build that mood board, so then the vocabulary of the movement can fit into the visual aesthetics, and it all makes sense. Because obviously, if you have a really gloomy dance, you're not going to be doing jazz hands. That movement vocabulary does not match with the visual aesthetic of the piece. And that's a really big thing for me. And yeah, so a lot of stories, a lot of photos, lyrics really inspire me, movies. A lot of things that aren't dancing inspire my dancing. And I think that it is important to realize that, yes, you can be inspired by other people's work, you can be inspired by other people's dancing, but there are so many things in the world that can inspire your dancing. I remember like my first or second week at college, I watched a dance that was about the process of making paper. And it was this beautiful contemporary duet, and it was about how paper is made. And okay, I had to make sure I wasn't going to sneeze again. But yeah, so like even just like natural processes, like how paper is made, there was a dance in our spring dance concert recently about like your digital footprint and how, you're not ever getting rid of that and it always follows you. And how, these really abstract concepts that have influenced and excited us and inspired us to create a different form of work based on it. And I think that that's really, really exciting. And I recently was listening to a podcast about inspiration, and I thought I would pull up the quote. So this is from Damien Osborne. He is like this realism painter, and he, was talking about places that he finds inspiration, including music that he plays in the studio, drawing something every single day, art as pleasure, being in nature. And he said, I like to paint things that I experience. I try not to be fake. I try not to please others through my paintings, but to really express myself. And he had a really big thing about, here it is, the daily work. So he said, quote, I think just being in the studio and experimenting all the time, making mistakes and learning from them is very important. Putting the hours in the studio is the only way to improve as an artist. By working every day in the studio, you'll find that you won't have to worry about looking for inspiration at all. Inspiration will come to you. Artists find inspiration from doing the actual work. Waiting for inspiration to strike before you feel like working is one of the most common mistakes of amateur artists. And I really was, felt connected to, really resonated with that, because in my choreography class, we were tasked with improving every single day of the semester. Improv when you're sad, when you're angry, when you're happy, when you want to do it, when you don't want to do it, when it's raining outside, when you have an ugly outfit on, when you're in an outfit that you can't really move in, when you can't find the time to dance, but you have to make the time. And it was a really big process of consciously making the time to create and absolutely not apologizing for it. We had a really big rule in the class, which was no precious making. And the biggest thing about that was like, no precious making. You're taking your improv for the day, and that's the improv for the day. Don't rewatch it. Don't go back. Don't try to fix it. Just feel it out, experience it, live it, and put it in your portfolio and go. And slowly, we started to get this kind of like habitual, like, what kind of movements do I always come back to? What kind of music do I always put on when I have to do this improv? And the conversation was about when you find yourself really finding yourself in these really strict patterns, even if you don't know that you're doing it, but you watch a couple weeks back and you're like, these all sort of look the same. That's when you take a turn and, start to find inspiration in other types of music. When I was feeling super like creatively down, I was like, all of my improvs are looking the same. I feel really bored doing this. I literally would just I went to the Apple Music hip hop station, and I don't listen to a lot of hip hop. I didn't know the songs that I was dancing to, and I would go to the Apple Music hip hop station and I would just shuffle it, and that was the song that I was improving to. So I had to immediately, on the spot, cold, come up with a new movement vocabulary that fits this type of music I've never, heard before. And all of that really came together in a way that's like, oh, I never thought that I could move like that, or like, that was an interesting use of my head here, when I would have, like, if I was just improvising like I usually do, I would have maybe left my head behind. And that daily work, while it sounds like a lot, we're going to have about 100 improvs at the end of the semester, while that sounds like a lot, and it was daunting at times, it was so beneficial because now I can look back to those improvs, like when I'm choreographing things, I can look back at those improvs and be like, okay, I remember really liking this one. Can I pick out something that I like that would maybe work in this style, or like with this, oh, this song is similar to this song that I improv to. Let's see how I put it in my body. And, you know, working every single day at the same tasks, you start to get both good at it, which is good. You know, like, nothing has helped me grow more as an artist let me form a sentence here. Nothing has helped me grow more as an artist than, you know, you're doing this improv every single day, doing this work every day, because I'm going to look back at it, and I'm gonna find it, and it's gonna like be a reflection of who I was at that moment. It's gonna be a reflection of my creativity at that moment, and it's really exciting not only to grow in that skill and become more comfortable with improv, but it's fun as a way to find inspiration, just putting on different music, or, you know, like there was a week that I strictly did all jazz improv, because I'm very usually in like this moody, kind of flowy, wavy, contemporary improv, and having I was like, okay, you can do whatever, but it has to be jazz. Like, those were the weeks that I really discovered things about myself and felt really inspired to create more jazz work. And I think just stepping out of your comfort zone, as obvious as it sounds, stepping out of your comfort zone is really the way to then improve and get better at what you're doing. And it's a great way to find inspiration. Now, that is a thing that is, you know, dancing inspiring other dancing, but it is a great way to find inspiration. And also, you know, I talked about it with Larissa last week. Watch stuff to learn stuff. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, but watch stuff to learn stuff. Watch dancing. That was a big thing with our Comp 2 class, was we were watching dancing that, like, was really foreign to us. We were watching people on stage just, like, shake and convulse for half an hour, and we were watching dances that happened completely in the dark, and we were watching, you know, performance art, and we were watching people sit on couches in the middle of streets, and we were watching people scale ladders and do backflips, and people mopping the stage as dance. And watching stuff outside of your comfort zone, watching stuff that is a little avant-garde, you know, it not only gives you inspiration to create, but it puts you in a mental framework of the industry that you're working in and what you're doing. And, you know, you can see what's working, what's not, and how that could maybe influence your work. I mean, I talked about it in the choreography episode, but the Crystal Pite's the statement is she's a very big inspiration for me, but especially the statement, because it is that, like, spoken story, and you feel like a fly on the wall, and, like, I love that feeling as an audience member, and I want to feel that when I choreograph as well. Watch stuff to learn stuff. And even with acting as well, like, what inspires me to act, like, good acting inspires me to act, inspires me to get better at it. And I feel very strongly, and Larissa said, you know, like, I really attached myself to watch stuff to learn stuff. And, you know, it sounds silly and contrived, but, you know, I feel very attached to that, because you don't get better if you don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, you don't get better at what you're doing if you don't know the landscape and the world that you're trying to work in. You know, authors have to read a lot. You know, actors watch a lot. Dancers watch a lot. Swimmers practice a lot, and they watch a lot of meets, and they see what's working and what's not. And it's a really interesting, and it's just so fulfilling when you're doing something and you're like, oh, I don't know how this is going to work out. You know, I don't know if I'm going to like this. And then you end up really liking it, and it becomes, like, kind of a touch point for you. Like, Bronx Gothic was that piece I was talking about with people, like, convulsing on stage for half an hour. You know, like, I was really anxious to watch it because I was like, does not feel like my speed. This feels completely outside of my comfort zone, but this felt like something that I could step into with an open mind. Is really my big thing. Was like, I'm gonna step into all these pieces with an open mind, and if I like them, cool. If I don't, cool. And I was like, okay, let's just walk into it with an open mind. And I ended up, while Bronx Gothic wasn't necessarily my full thing, I don't know if I'd go back and watch it again. There were parts of it that I really enjoyed, and there were parts of it that really touched me, and just something that I truly wanted to encapsulate with some of my own work comes from Bronx Gothic, something that I was initially, like, really turned off by. And I think, as contrived as it is, like I said, stepping outside your comfort zone is really important because it helps you to kind of bridge that gap. Like, what's out there that you might not know about that could really, turn your whole creative process around? Like, what's something that really changed how you look at theater, how you look at dance, how you look at music? The next thing you watch might become the biggest piece of inspiration for you. And that is one of my favorite things about exploring the world of dance, the world of the arts, because every next thing you watch is becoming a step on that ladder of you finding a fully rounded creative voice. And it's been really lovely to kind of discover that. And I wanted to really strongly talk about sort of what the artist I just read sort of like what the artist I just read, Damien Osborne. He said that you can't wait for inspiration to come around. You just have to keep making, and it will hit you when it's ready, when it's there, when you're open to it. And as silly and spunky as it sounds, inspiration is, I don't want to say fickle, but it is the word, like, in my heart. It is such a fickle thing. It comes and it goes in waves, and some days you have your finger on the pulse of it, and some days it's in a different country and you don't even know what you're doing. And that's why that daily creative work is so important, because you're forced to create when you don't feel like it. You're forced to create when you feel uninspired or, unmotivated. You're forced to create sad, create happy, create angry. You're forced to do it all. And then you very quickly realize that inspiration is always only a few reaches away, even if it feels super far away. But another thing with this conversation is that I just want to say that it's okay if you don't feel inspired to create all of the time. It is okay if you do not feel inspired to create all of the time. And that's really important for me to say, because there are some of these days where I'm like, I just don't want to do this improv. Like, I know it's only going to take me 2 minutes, but I don't want to do it. And it doesn't make you a bad artist, dancer, musician, actor, actress, I don't know, dramaturg, like, it doesn't make you a bad creative if you don't feel inspired to create every day. It's part of the human condition, like, it comes and goes in waves. And, like, I'm out here talking about all these things that inspire me, and I'm making it sound like I'm always constantly inspired to create, but sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm not. And sometimes you have to do things that are hard and things that, you have to create when you don't want to, but, don't beat yourself up if, you're not feeling inspired by a certain project or assignment or, like, choreography thing you have to do if you're, in the same world that I am. And I was thinking, like, don't beat yourself up about not finding that inspiration, because from what I've learned in my years of creating, especially getting more in-depth in creating these past 2 years in college, is that the inspiration will find you. You will never completely do something uninspired. I don't know a single person that has ever done anything uninspired. Yes, some things are more inspired than others, but I don't know a single artist, like, in my circle that has ever done anything completely uninspired. It comes, and it comes when you're ready for it. And when you're trudging through the woods trying to find it, when you're looking for it, when you are, in the throes of like, I'm going to create this, and I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I'm working and I'm working and I'm working, and you're working, the inspiration is coming to you with every step. Every step it gets harder, you're a step closer to it being easier and feeling free and feeling completely expressive. And it doesn't make you a bad artist to feel discouraged in the times where the work feels like work. They always say, work a job you'll love, do a job you'll love, and you'll never work a day in your life. That's absolute bullshit. Especially if you love it, especially if you're an artist, because you are chasing this dream, this goal, and it's difficult, and it requires a lot of work, and it requires a lot of passion, and because you love it, you are more inclined to keep doing it. And if you love your job, you ideally will be doing more of it. Not even ideally, but more than likely you'll be doing more of it because you love it, and that work does not go unnoticed by the gods of inspiration, if that's what you want to call it, by the throes of inspiration. That work does not go unnoticed, and there are times where the work is going to come really easy, and you're going to immediately have that inspiration, and it'll just be like a light bulb, and you're like, ding, 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 I've got it. And there's going to be times where it's just not, and you're going to have to push through and kick down some walls and really, really work for it. But those times are coming. And my biggest piece of advice is to start looking for inspiration all over. Watch things out of your comfort zone. Talk to new people. People watch. I did a lot of acting inspiration from just people watching on campus. People watch. Find things that you like. Find things that really speak to you. Find things that don't speak to you. Because just as important as it is to find what touches you, find what doesn't touch you, so that if it comes to like a choreography situation and that thing is popping up in your choreography and you're like, why do I feel weird? Like, why don't I enjoy this? You can be like, oh, it's because it has this quality and I don't like that quality in other people's work. I'm not going to put it in mine. And I think another thing to remember is that art is not to please others. We just had spring dance concert. My parents came down and watched, and the whole time they were like, I didn't understand any of it. And you're not supposed to understand any of it. Sure, there's dances that are saying things, and sure, there's dances that are, have a message, but art in any form is not made for every single person to understand it. And it's not even made for it to mean the same thing to every single person, especially Ask Her Again Tomorrow was like a very cathartic story for me, but it is a very cathartic story for me, but it could mean something totally different to 5 different people in the audience. They all have different interpretations of it. And I think the biggest thing to remember is just that your art doesn't have to please everyone. And I found that when I stopped trying to please people, whether it's please myself or please an audience or please my peers or my professors, when I stopped trying to please like external people and just started to create what I wanted, like I wasn't trying to please this like external version of myself. Like I was just trying to please my heart and my soul and move the way that I want to move. That's when inspiration really started to flow in, and I felt very confident in the creative choices that I was making. And my biggest thing is just keep working on it, keep going at it. You'll find inspiration in the wildest places. It's out there for you, and what strikes the creative chord with you is different than what strikes the creative chord with me. It's different than what strikes the creative chord with, my friends. It's different for every single artist, but it's out there for you. So don't get discouraged. You will find something that inspires you, and even if it feels like hard work, and it will feel like hard work because it is, your inspiration is always just right around the corner. And I recommend watching things to learn things. I recommend listening to new types of music. I recommend reading new things. I recommend witnessing new things, trying out new things, and don't be hard on yourself when the work feels like work, because even though you love it, it is still work, and it is okay that it feels like work. And that's the biggest message, I think, of this episode, is that it is okay that your art feels like work, because it is. Your art is work, and even though you love it, it is work, and it will feel like that, and it will be taxing, and it will be uncomfortable. And I really think that that is the biggest hurdle to overcome, because when you figure that out and you know how you work under stress and how you work when it feels like work, you'll be able to navigate how to use, your back pocket of things that inspire you to help push yourself forward through maybe a hard patch of creation. And with that, I think that wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can follow the journey at BFA Baby Podcast on Instagram, or follow me at Tata's Ballet, periods between words. Again, please let me know what you want to see in Season 3 down in the poll. You can also DM me. You can email me at bfababypodcast@gmail.com. I want to know what you want to see on the next season. Thank you so much for tuning in. Meredith, a kiss. Mwah.